Welcome back. Thank you for joining us here on Faith, Frauds, and Falsehoods, where we talk about the cults and religions of the world today. Thanks for joining us as we continue our discussion on the Institute and Basic Life Principles. But while you're here, if you would, leave us a like and a comment, subscribe, and help others find us.
Before we begin, let's make it very clear that the opinions we present are ours alone. They do not represent the views or the opinions of our respective churches or employers. Now let's begin.
Awesome.
Well, Brian, we're back again, and this time we're going to talk about media influence and propaganda. So,
okay, how does that work for them, right?
Because he taught, raise your families a certain way, do X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. This is how you should live your life. Institute and Basic Life Principles, right?
Right.
And that we talked about homeschooling and how homeschooling and such. He was leading up to, and still is. This organization still exists, by the way. Mm-hmm. Gothard is not the head of it, but it still exists.
Yeah.
We're going to change America. We're going to change the world. We're going to have a Christian America again. One of the things, the most popular propaganda or media influential thing that we see that people know that sparked this sparked people talking about it recently, is the Duggars.
You're right. Okay.
So Jim Bob Duggar was running for, I think it was Arkansas State Senate at the time. I think that was a race he lost, but he was actually in the House of Representatives of Arkansas a couple of times, I believe, previously. And he was being interviewed, and somebody noticed he had this huge family. It was 14 kids at the time or something, 14 or something.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And at the time, they even lived in a small house. And he got the opportunity to do this reality show on TLC, as TLC was kind of ramping up with these reality shows. And TLC used to be called the Learning Channel. I don't know if anybody ever remembers that. It used to be the Learning Channel.
Yeah.
Like MTV used to be music television.
Right.
And the Duggars was a interesting reality show because we'd had reality shows before that were kind of social trash,
Right.
The worst of society. And so the Duggars were seen as this kind of wholesome family. They were homeschoolers and very conservative, and on mm-hmm. camera they all loved each other. And honestly, because of a lot of this obedience training stuff, they really did. They didn't really act out of character that much. It wasn't a whole lot of difference on camera and off camera stuff. They were very obedient and all this. And so the Duggars really seen this as an opportunity to show other people that this is how they should live. Hey, we live like this. We've brought up our family like this. This is good for you too.
Mm-hmm.
So that being popular, and that made a lot of backlash. I read again in Ginger's book, she talked about there was a free ginger movement. The show started when she was 10 years old, and they started this free ginger movement because they went and visited a big city. And she talked about how she preferred big cities, and they lived in the country in Arkansas.
Right.
And she didn't understand what they were, talking about and stuff. So it caused a lot of controversy and people talking and things like that.
Yeah.
And they seen it as a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Several of the Duggar daughters wrote a book because when they would go and travel and with the show, they would have girls walk up to them and ask them or tell them, hey, I've seen how you dress modestly on the show and how you behave and act like this. And I want that for my life too. And so I want to be like you type stuff. So they wrote a whole book together on how to follow Gothard's ways, basically,
mm-hmm.
which some of them now regret because they don't follow Gothard's ways. But they wrote a whole book on this. So there was definitely some the Duggar shows were very influential. And even after the controversy and the scandal with Josh Duggar, which I haven't covered mm-hmm. a lot because I don't feel like it has a lot to do with IBLP, honestly.
Right.
I do feel like some of the cover up and some of that was handled is because of the family was following Gothard's practices
mm-hmm.
and not dealing with these problems. But regardless, lots of people have grown up in this and not grown up to be child pornographers and stuff. So I don't believe that necessarily is why that happened with him. He's in prison now for child pornography. Yeah. There was a controversy about him touching his sisters. He went to his parents and admitted it. And they canceled the show briefly, and then they brought it back just about the girls, basically, as they were getting older, and not so mm-hmm. much about the parents. So there was another Duggar show that was on, but it was still seen as we got to keep this show because we're the good face of the movement.
Yeah.
The other thing that the Shiny Happy people covered was there's a political movement called the Joshua Generation, which has to do with IBLP, but isn't just IBLP, but is a group of very conservative Christians, young Christians, who are basically getting involved in government and getting involved in politics with the goal of having conservative Christians, fundamentalists even, involved in politics in America, so that they have more political control, basically, to steer our national politics into a different direction.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's based off of Joshua in the Bible?
I really don't know where they're getting that. I didn't pull enough research on that to tell you where they're getting that from.
I would assume so, because Joshua was the one to take over after Moses. I could see the connection there.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And they've had some success in that, and they've had some spectacular failures in that.
Right.
Where they went a little very right-wing on some stuff and things. But there is definitely some people making plans and saying, hey, we're going to send you to these schools so that you'll get these internships, so you go work for these people so you can get into political power. And honestly, this is nothing new in America.
No.
We've had several presidents. Is it 3 sets of presidents that were father and son?
No. Bush.
How many?
And then
Adams to start.
Well, pretty sure they were uncle and nephew, not father and son.
No, they were father and son.
John Adams and John Quincy Adams?
Yes.
Okay.
You think I'm wrong?
Bush. I'd have to go look. But I kind of remember
the Roosevelts were related, but not father and son.
But not father and son. Yeah.
Right. The Kennedy family. The Kennedy family is a very political dynasty who's kind of involved in lots of politics everywhere. Politicians, senators, representatives, state senators, etc. Yeah. This is not an uncommon thing in politics, especially not for groups of this. I've even worked with political groups whose goal was to get local people involved in the politics and to get more of our people in politics, basically. I used to be a part of the Patriot Party. That's what that was all about. The Patriot Party movement at the time was to get more, right-wing patriots into politics and stuff. So they've kind of done some of the similar thing there with influencing things. I don't know if they've been super successful with just the IBLP, but there's definitely been some inroads there.
Yeah.
That's happened. And so they covered that in the documentary too. One thing in that documentary, they covered a lot of things from a very outside of Christianity perspective.
Yeah.
So honestly, this is probably one of those things where I give a little more slack because I'm like, well, it's not such a bad thing to me to have people who are Christians into politics, versus somebody who isn't a Christian who believes so completely differently, not just a little differently on things. It's probably like, why would I want somebody who believes that in politics? So I get that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll probably have a little more thing on that. And the Duggars. I think some people try to make the Duggars out to be this evil thing, and I think, honestly, they were trying to do the right thing. I think they're misguided by following Gothard's principles here. But I think they were trying to do the right thing. It's what it appears to me. But we'll talk about that more in our response episode.
Yeah, of course.
When we talk about response. So that's our media influences and propaganda.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Matt. That's always entertaining to see some of these social issues. So we'll see you in the next one.